Hi everyone! So, if you're new to this channel, I'm Ash, and my channel is called Bibliophile Crocodile. I love to talk about books, art, and little shenanigans that I do throughout. So, this is my first video where I'm showing my face, and I'm hoping this would not be the last. So, today I did a 24-hour reading challenge. I'm not done, I'm doing a 24-hour reading challenge. I'm at the 22-hour mark, and I kind of wanted to share with you guys what all books that I've read until now. And some of them have been so good, I don't want to forget what those books were about in detail. So let's get to it. How the reading challenge works is that I'll be reading for 24 hours, not continuously in a day, but uh, I'll be reading, and all of the time will be compounded or added up to 24 hours. And I wanted to see how many days it might take, how many books it might take for me to reach the mark of 24 hours. So, first of all, the book that I started with was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, which is a trilogy set in a dystopian world where may the odds be ever in your favor is the theme of everything. Most of you might know, or have most of you might have read the books or have watched the movies, and there are two new books that have come out now which got people interested in Hunger Games all over again. I've been reading this annually for god knows how many years, and this is one of the rereads. So the first book was Hunger Games, and then I read a book by, I wanted to check out how Sally Rooney writes because I've never read Normal People or any of her other books, and I just wanted to check out their writing before getting into a commitment of a bigger book. So I always prefer picking up their short stories because I believe that short stories are much harder to execute because you have to convey all of the feelings and the stories inside that small word limit. So I picked up this book by Mr. Salary by Sally Rooney. Uh, Nothing special about it. I didn't really like it. I'm glad I picked up the book because I would not be probably reading anything by Sally Rooney again. But yeah, Mr. Salary, it's just been a week since I've read it and I remember nothing about it. So that's, yeah. Next, I read Ghacha Gochar by Vivek Shanbhag, which I've been meaning to read for a long time. And after my master's dissertation that I did on ants, I felt Ghacha Gochar would be the perfect book to follow up on. So, Ghacha Gochar is set in India and the narrator is a man who is from a upper middle class family, and he describes his relationship and ongoings of the daily life with his family and each of those members. And this might sound boring, but the way it's written is beautiful. So it starts with him sitting in a coffee house, and it reminded me so much of Indian coffee house where we go for having masala doshas and that famous cutlet that they have. And I feel like that's what Vivek Shanbhag might have been influenced by. So, and then there is a waiter who the narrator thinks is godly, can who just says one liners here and there, and it somehow ends up being very relatable to the situation the narrator is going through. So he always describes this waiter to be this one godly guy. And then from there onwards, we just hear his musings about his daily life, how women are, how ants have played such a huge role in their life. And these ants keep appearing here and there. That made me very happy. Uh, I don't want to give too much away, but it's a really, really good read. It flies by, And if you're looking for something to pick up from Indian authors, I would suggest Vivek Shanbhag. And the next book is You Should Have Left by Daniel Kernan. Like the name suggests, it's a horror thriller kind of mystery book where you don't know what's going on until it's too late. So the protagonist is a father, an author, a writer who writes stories for movies. He has written the story for a movie called Besties, and it's basically that's exactly what it is, Besties, the storyline also. And he's trying to write the second part of for the movie, but he's been let off the job and he's just really depressed. He's gone to this Airbnb with his family, his child and his wife, and then he is just writing in his journal about every day, about his wife, about his child, about what all he does. And then in the middle of all of that, we keep seeing these weird parts where which don't make any sense. Like while he's writing, he'll be like, "You should have left. Leave now," and you'll be like, "What's going on?" And then yeah, things go south really fast. And yeah, it's a very fast paced fun ride. You should definitely check it out. The next book is Yellow Face by RF Kwang. I have been meaning to read this for ages. I love RF Kwang. I've read Catabasis, I don't know how you pronounce that, but I've read Catabasis. I've not finished it yet. I'm somewhere in the middle of it because I love it so much, and I have this problem where if I love a book too much, I cannot finish it, which is really weird. But anyways, I'm reading Catabasis. I finished reading Yellow Face. I really want to read Babel. And my first art of Kong was Poppy Wars, and I love Poppy Wars so much. It's very close to my heart. So Arif Kwang is a beloved author, and Yellowface did not disappoint me. Yellowface was crazy, insane. So we follow this unreliable narrator, you could say, uh, because she's kind of weird. She's a writer. Again, I sense a theme here. I don't know why I've been reading a lot about writers, but so there was another writer friend of hers. Both of them pass out, and then the Asian writer friend of hers, who's also Chinese, uh, ends up being very famous because of her talent, obviously. And she's just really jealous about her friend just getting all this fame and this recognition, which she also deserves but is not getting. And then it's just the beginning of the story is all just jealous ramblings of this woman saying she's like this, she does that, I wish it was me kind of storyline. And you're like, where is this going? And then one of these days, so both of them are friends apparently, but this woman does not believe it. She thinks uh, other girl, the other writer, who's the famous writer, is keeping her around for shits and giggles and like somebody to have to look down upon. But turns out she was actually really considering her as a friend. And then one of her books is being turning one of her books is being turned into a Netflix adaptations, and they're celebrating that at the famous writer's home. And while doing that, something goes wrong and she dies. And she watches her die in front of her. No, this is not a mystery where this person kills her or something. She just chokes and dies. And her a book that she was writing was there in her house, and this girl decides to publish it under her name. So it's a Chinese war, World War One related book that the other girl had been writing, and this girl basically steals the manuscript and publishes it as her own. And then we see So this is what is on the blurb. I'm not giving any spoilers. This is where the story begins. And then we just see how far she'd go to, like, protect her lie, to keep up the facade of this. And she puts up this morally, she changes her name to a more racially ambiguous name, which is her middle name, but is kind of a weird decision. And not just her decision, you'd come to know. Puts up this very tanned photo of hers, and the protagonist is white. And then yeah, a lot of things, weird things are going on, which reminded me of time when I was in bookstagram, and a lot of these things would go down in Twitter and bookstagram, where some author would be stealing somebody else's writings, or saying that, yeah, I'm not going to go too much into the details because it's pure drama and crazy drama. I've not had this much fun reading, and I was like, where is this going? I was getting so much secondhand embarrassment, and like, and then after a while it just turned criminal, and then yeah, too many things. But Yellowface was so worth it, so worth the wait. I definitely want to own a copy at some point. But yeah, I'm so glad that I ended up reading it. Then we have uh, Catching Fire, the second book of Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, where uh, okay, if somebody here is wanting to read Hunger Games, I don't want to give spoilers by saying what goes in the second book, because that will give spoilers for the first book. So Catching Fire was also very slow in the beginning, and I was not a fan of it. I always remember struggling to get through the beginning of Catching Fire, but it's so worth it. So keep struggling, it's really worth it. Then I ended up finishing Catching Fire, and then I read this really beautiful book by Annalee Newitz called Automatic Noodle, which has been written this year or the last, where this is set in like this futuristic world where um, robots exist, artificial intelligence exists alongside humans, and they have been used for everything, like every kind of industry, every kind of services you could imagine they have been used for. And this is in the restaurant industry, where food industry, where a couple of robots, decommissioned robots, get together from different places. Like one is a war veteran, one is from the cooking industry, one has been used in different things, was decommissioned from the start, so did not have a purpose. And then we just see them getting together and starting their own restaurant. So it's a robot run restaurant, and it's very cute. It's really low stakes, very lo-fi, and yeah, just a beautiful story to read, and makes you think about how the world would end up becoming, which this could happen at some point in life. And very real, very relatable for some reason. And I was just questioning myself, where one of these robots has, like, does a top surgery, gets a top surgery done. And that was very interesting, because could I call the robot non-binary, because that's how they were behaving, or gender fluid? Not gender fluid, non-binary, because they had a half human, half robot kind of look, and very interesting. And I was talking about this book to my friends, and when I described that there's kind of like a trans non-binary robot representation going on in this book, and they were like, aren't all robots non-binary? And then I was like, yeah, but the character Sweetie is made to be a female robot in the start, which is really messed up. A lot of messed up elements in the book, but very wholesome in general, where it all ends up. So it's a very sweet story, very short, and you can read it on a nice rainy day where, or when you want like something slow. So that was Automatic Noodle. I definitely recommend it. It's one of my favorites this year. And then I moved on to a couple of short stories. So I was looking for some short stories to read in science fiction, and I was like, let me look some books up. And then in Reddit, I came across Reddit or Fable. I can't remember where. I came across the suggestion for the book called The Welt by Ray Bradbury, the same Ray Bradbury who wrote Fahrenheit 251, which I have not read yet. Sorry. I might read it in the upcoming days. But yeah, so when I looked up The Welt, I came across this website called the Library of Short Stories, where basically it is a library of short stories which are available to read for free online. And that was really interesting. And the collections were not the usual short stories that you'd see. I went into the horror and science fiction section, and then I found some crazy stories. So the first one was The Welt by Ray Bradbury, which was which is basically set in this futuristic world. Again, a theme that I sense here, where these parents have designed this nursery for their kids, which is uh, like it shifts into whatever you want it to be. It looks like a savanna, an African savanna right now. And the kids are the kids have somehow summoned lions into the African savanna. You'd randomly hear screams from the savanna. Sometimes when you go into the room, it feels too real, where there are like order releasing sensors and stuff, where it feels too real. And sometimes the parents end up feeling like, maybe this nursery was not such a good idea, and they bring in a psychiatrist and everything. The kids are really weird, and then shit goes south really fast. Such a fun book, like such a fun story, really interesting. I've never seen this done before. So if you have any other recommendations, like where a whole room is like an evil entity kind of setting. I've read about house being evil entities, and that's some of my favorite stories. But here it felt like the evilness from the kids got absorbed into the room, and then the room turned evil, which was really interesting. So you can read that for free. Anybody who's not even into or struggles with reading, or is a beginner into reading and wants to check out some cool sci-fi books, I would suggest the Library of Short Stories website and The Welt by Ray Bradbury. Next, I read Hypnos by H.P. Lovecraft. So I love Lovecraft horrors. Anything Lovecraftian is a favorite of mine, and he is amazing. His writings are crazy hard to get through because it's all just vibes that I go off of. I cannot like account specific elements of what those stories are about. It's like that inarticulateness that he describes in a story sometimes when it comes to cosmic horrors comes to me when I describe Lovecraftian horrors. And it was the same in Hypnos. In Hypnos, basically two people use medical substances to seek something that's beyond their dreams or what's in their dreams, and then shit goes south. Yeah, and they encounter something so terrible that it changes their lives. So very interesting, very quick, very short. And if you want to try any Lovecraftian horrors before getting into the bigger ones, I would suggest this one or Tales of Tulu or anything. You could just pick up any Lovecraftian horror. The Outsider, for one, was my first H.P. Lovecraft book. So He's a father of horror for somebody who doesn't know who Lovecraft is. And Stephen King is influenced by Lovecraft. Most, even Pennywise is influenced by one of the Lovecraftian horrors, multiple of the Lovecraftian horrors. So, yeah. Now, the last book that I read, that I finished, last story that I finished was one of the best things that I've read in a while. The Shape of Things by Ray Bradbury again. In this, so there is a man and his wife. His wife is pregnant. They live a very happy life, and they are very excited for their child. They are nervous. The woman goes into labor, and then the dad is called, and the man is called into the hospital, like the room, and he's like, "Oh, my child is dead, isn't it?" And then the doctor is like, "No, no, so is my wife dead?" And then he's like, "No, no, this is something even worse." And it's like, what else could go worse? Is something wrong with my child? And then they were like, "You should see it for yourself." And then on the table lies a tiny blue pyramid that's crying out loud for him. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Yeah, she gave birth to a tiny blue pyramid instead of a tiny human, because the child. This is also set in a futuristic world, which seems to be like a running theme for Ray Bradbury. And the machines that help in labor somehow pushed out the child in some way, and the machines got malfunctioned while in the middle of labor, and the child got pushed into another dimension, and the child is in another dimension, and the version that you see here is the dimension that the child has been pushed into. I don't know how to explain it, but like, yeah, the child is blue pyramid now with three eyes and six limbs. And it's just a very weird, very wholesome actually story, where you see them trying to love the child. And well, I'm not gonna say if they succeed or not, but it's pretty fast, pretty quick, and really interesting for somebody who wants to check out something quick and mind blowing. So I definitely suggest The Shape of Things. Also, you can, which also is available on the library of short stories. Then that's all the books that I've read until now. I have reached 22 hours and a couple of minutes, like here and there. I don't remember how much. And currently, I'm reading the third part of Hunger Games, Mockingjay. I do not remember anything from Mockingjay, so I feel like I'm reading a brand new book. So I'm somewhere in the start, very start. Then I'm reading a Malayalam book called The Friday Forensic Club by Rajat R. It's a DC Books uh, published book, and I picked it up when I was in Trivandrum from the no, when I was in Kochi from the metro, and that was interesting. I'm still in the middle of it. It's very gory, very horror, right up my alley, very true crime. Then I have the gold book, Dungeon Chronicle. I've been waiting to read this for a long time, and my best friend gifted it to me, and by Matt Dinman. And yeah, I'm just having a lot of fun reading it, annotating it. He even made a bookmark which has his face on it. It's very cute, very funny, and yeah. And I'm also reading House of Leaves, which I mentioned earlier. It's a humongous book to get through, but I'm taking my sweet time. I might even take years to read it, but I'm gonna read it with full intent. No speeding through, nothing, no skimming. Yeah. So I just have like 2 more hours or 1 more hour and a couple more to finish, which I finish this 24-hour reading challenge, and then I'll post what book that I read last in my post. So keep a Yeah, keep an eye out for that. And that's all for today. Bye bye.